everybody. We're here. Welcome to 20Q, 20 Questions with Interesting People, where we learn the origin stories of everyday superheroes in the LGBT community and beyond. I am your host, the very handsome Tim Kirk, and our guest this time is Sonyl Nagale. Hi, Sonyl.
Hi, Tim. Very, very handsome, of course.
You have very good eyesight, too, I must say.
Well, for being nearly blind and having very prescription contacts, I can see well enough.
Okay. I think your eyesight's doing good for me anyway. So I think we should just get into it right now. I'm going to start, as we do with everyone. I ask 20 questions. I ask everyone the same 10 questions, and they get to choose the other 10 questions that they'd like to answer based on a list already provided. So the first question is a bit about your background. Where are you originally from, and what was it like?
So, I have this little thing that I say. Born in Chicago, raised in Iowa, seasoned in LA, and now New York flavored.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot. What was it like in Iowa?
Iowa was actually very supportive. So I started coming out at 15. And a funny story is that I came out to my best friend since kindergarten last. We're still best friends. And basically what happened is I had to be sat down and spoken for. And at the end of it he says, yeah, so?
You had to be spoken for?
Like, one of my friends delivered my little speech for me.
Oh, okay. And he was not surprised or shocked, or he just took it in stride?
He just took it in stride. And, now, 25 years later, we're still best friends.
That's awesome. I had a very similar telling my friends. It was a big trauma for me, and they all like, oh, really? Well, knock me down with a feather. Okay, what are you talking about?
It's like one of those who cares, but at the same time, it's like so nerve-wracking to tell your friends because you don't know.
I lost one or two, and everyone else has been just rock solid, and it didn't make any difference whatsoever. But that's part of the seasons of life. It's the flavor of life,
Right. And one of the things that I'll say about growing up in Iowa is that for some surprising reason, I was never bullied. I was never gay bashed. I was never anything.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
This was the late 90s, so maybe things are starting to turn around.
That's interesting, too, because Doug Touche, who is another one of our guests, he grew up in Michigan, and he spent many of his summers working on a farm in Illinois.
Mm.
So he has another background. He never mentioned anything about being bullied. Mm. So I think that's kind of interesting, how people much more leave you alone or cool about stuff.
Yeah, up until recently, Iowa has always been a progressive state. We were one of the first. Iowa was one of the first to legalize same-sex marriage as a Iowa Supreme Court decision.
Wow. Okay, I think I knew that. Anyway, so going on to the next question, which is something that I'm surprised at the variety and the power of this question for so many people. Which life experience had the greatest impact on you?
To be honest, it was playing the Barber Adagio for strings in youth orchestra my junior year of high school. And it was one of those moments where it's the most sublime piece of orchestral work that I know. It is intensely emotional. It is draining to perform, not because of technicality, but because of the emotion that is evoked and emoted during that time that you play it. Like, I consider this higher than playing an all-state when I was in high school.
Really?
I do not play anymore currently. I hope to still doodle around every now and then, but the long story short is that it was such a transformative experience to be tied to the entire orchestra in almost a symbiotic way that really, it stands out in my memory.
Okay. I can see that. I played the French horn when I was a kid. And one concert I had to play, I was with one other guy, my friend. And of course, the French horn at the beginning of Fanfare for the Common Man.
Yes.
So you got to hit those notes and you got to sound real good. You got to ring like a bell.
Yes,
You know?
you do.
So I remember doing that, and that was a strong experience as well. Okay, so that's interesting. So music has played a great part in your life, and I can see that, and I know that you're a violinist.
Yes. And so, while I haven't been pursuing that in the field or in my adult life, I'll always be a musician.
Yeah,
I have a funny story, actually. So, there was a cellist who was admitted to the emergency room. And when they asked for his religion, he said musician.
Okay.
Could be apocryphal, could be not, but this was a story that I heard from my youth orchestra director.
So, since one more time, he was a cellist, and how was his religion?
So he was a cellist admitted to the emergency room.
Oh, okay.
And so, of course, they asked for your religion just in case anything untoward
You
were
need
happen.
to have someone take care of
You
you.
need to have someone to take care of your last rites. And so he said, musician.
I think there's the story, the progression is, it's like the mathematicians all think they're musicians, musicians all think they're comedians, comedians all think they're actors, actors all think they're politicians, politicians all think they're kings, and all kings think they're gods.
I like that progression.
Okay.
I think that, so the funny thing is that I'm trained as a graphic designer.
Oh,
So that was what I did in college, and it was always funny that people would look up to us as graphic designers in college saying, oh my god, you're crazy, you work crazy hours. And we would look up to the architecture students and say, oh my god, you're crazy, you work crazy hours. And it's funny how the progression is that graphic designers don't think they're architects, but architects think they're graphic designers, furniture, interior designers, everything. So it's kind of an interesting progression that way too.
And one of my good friends, Amy Schreiber, who worked with an NBC for years, she studied architecture a long time, and she knows that they're very unsung, and there's so many of them. Most of them are never given the glamour assignments that we associate with. It's like chefs. It's like just because you're a marquee chef and you're on the Food Network, the vast majority of people are people who work 70 hours on their feet, and it beats them down, and they don't get any glamour, they don't get any respect. And that's pretty much the closest equivalent I can match to architecture.
Indeed.
So, okay. Now, this is a question, and people give very different answers to this one as well. What would you say to anyone interested in an aspect of your experience? Meaning, if someone wanted to explore an idea or prospective opportunity based on what you can tell them, what would be the main thing to discourage them?
Love what you do.
Yeah.
That's what I found that I lacked at my last position, was that I didn't love it. And I would say my experience says that love what you do, because otherwise it becomes rote, you don't enjoy it.
I would have to agree to that with that for a lot of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Just don't do a job. Do a career, do a life.
If you have the opportunity, some people have to pay the bills, and I feel that we tend to brush them aside. However, everybody, you can find something that has meaning in your life.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be the work. It can be your comrades. It can be your partners in arms. It could be anything up to and including your work. But keep in mind your colleagues. If you're having fun with them, if you enjoy them, if you stay in touch with them,
Yes.
that's a very important thing.
I would absolutely agree with that. I also find meaning in A lot of other things you can do. It's the work. I think someone pointed out to me a long time ago because he was doing very well in film. He said, there's a point where Steven Spielberg gets up and he rolls his eyes and he goes, "Another day at the office." It's like for him, that's what everyone else wishes they could do that. But I mean, there's got to be a point where he's just like something he's fed up with, and you go, "Yeah, I'd imagine that." So I mean, you can't be inspired all the time, but you can be motivated to do what you do.
Yes.
So I would agree with that.
There's a motivation aspect that's not just the day-to-day, it is the ephemeral. It is the metadata on top of what you're doing.
I call that the soft skills.
The soft skills, exactly.
So the next question is, what is your most noteworthy achievement?
That's actually an interesting one because it's been 10 years since I would consider my most noteworthy achievement. Professionally, that is. I'll start on the professional and then I'll move into the personal. I was the lead architect of the JavaScript side, so the front end side of the AmericanIdol.com voting application when it first launched back in 2010, I think it was.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So
that's because you work at Fox.
Yes, at Fox Entertainment. Yes, so I, with my right-hand person, wrote every single line of JavaScript, chained at the hip for a month. I was even dreaming in JavaScript. And so what ended up happening is we created an application along with 2 other partners that was so successful that we staked our careers on it and we implemented it and basically won.
Very, very good. That's well done. I remember this when it happened.
Yeah,
so you did that. Huh?
We did that, and I would have to say personally, my most noteworthy achievement is that I've always been a good friend.
Okay, very good. Okay, other people have said some things along the line with continuing to be who I am and maintaining and stuff like that. So that's in the same vein. Is that just being the person you are.
Because one of the most noteworthy compliments that one of my friends gave me is that I consider myself an empath. And one of my friends said, "Yes, you put Deanna Troi to shame."
I was going to say Deanna Troi because you're a Trekkie anyway, so it makes perfect sense. Okay. And now, this is another question following along that, and this is a pretty good segue, I guess, into it. Is the biggest personal challenge you have faced? A personal injury, a seemingly overwhelming task, a personal or professional goal, a difficult situation you had to overcome? Which was the biggest challenge you have ever faced?
Accepting my bipolar 2 diagnosis.
Okay.
I've been medicated for depression, for bipolarity since I was 17. And I've had to live with the idea that my emotions are out of control, and but there are ways to fix it.
I know several people who suffer from bipolar disorder, so they do as well. And okay, you mentioned before, and I'm going to ask you this question now. What would you say was the transformational moment in your life? A meaningful gift, a reason to belong to something, being a parent, good job, bad job?
I think for me, the transformational moment was believing in something. And that might sound like a trite statement, but what it was believing in myself.
Very good. No, I think there's a moment in things you change based on something that happens. If something strikes you, but you're no longer the person you were just before.
Mm-hmm. And the moment that happened was when I made my job instead my career.
Okay.
And I trusted in myself. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was just reading an article about imposter syndrome, and I was like, check.
Yes, okay. Is that ladders?
No, it was. I don't remember where it was, but
It's like you just don't think of yourself as being good enough.
oh yeah,
You have to believe in yourself.
yeah. You have to believe in yourself, even if it's a charade that goes with you from moment to moment, and you think that you're not good enough, but then you prove that you are. I think for people with imposter syndrome, you have to take stock of what you've done, what you've accomplished, and then look at the facts, not the figures in your head.
You know, I was talking to someone else the other day, and one of the interviews, and I didn't say it, but I do this all the time, and I said the great thing you should do is track everything that you do. That's one of the things you do when you keep a list of what you do. You track, you understand, you take inventory. You go, oh, what do you know? You know, you do, which is a great motivator as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely agree with that one. Now, this is the most cliche question I ask everybody, but everybody has a different answer. What drives you? What gets you up in the morning? What's the thing that makes you want to be alive and do something every day when you get up?
Coffee.
Coffee is the thing that drives you?
No, that's actually not completely true because I don't drink coffee that much, but I've kind of weaned off that habit. It is my partner.
Okay.
I find that literally he gets me up in the morning because he stirs at 5 a.m. and starts watching shows on his iPad. And then I wake up naturally. I haven't actually had to set an alarm in years. So that's the literal. The figure, the non-literal version of it is, now that I think about it, I think that it's really just the idea of helping people.
Okay, some people said things similar to that, and I think that people express possibility, or you can you can evolve, or there's something change you can contribute to, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's funny. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of people tend to have a really good-hearted belief that they could do something to make life better for everybody. You know.
I think the type of people that would be on this podcast are definitely those that are inclined to do something for the greater good.
You want to make a contribution.
Not saying anything against anyone else, but I think that contributing to a society that has treated you hostilely in the past just motivates you that much more to give back.
Yeah, I think you also get a little tougher. Things don't daunt you the way they do for other people who had it so easy. When you realize you have people you know are not just you're never going to win, but bit by bit you change people, and then that gets you stronger and gives you more strength to want to do something. I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
That's definitely true. I find that I have changed people's minds before.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people who firmly believes that being stalwart and you're never going to win anybody by lecturing or scolding or arguing with them.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be who you are consistently and be there and strong and be the person you say you are to people, and over the course of time, and it's usually not that long, they come to a realization. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, you got a really good ally or a good friend, and you won their respect because you've been you respected yourself, and you're respecting them from your authentic self, mm-hmm. and that really does play a big part. I think
it's powerful.
It is powerful. I do believe that. So this question is something that is very personal, I think, to a lot of people. What is the first thing you want to come to people's minds when they think of you?
Kindness.
Okay. That's what you want them to think, is you're a kind man.
I feel like I haven't always done so. It's difficult for me to maintain being a good person at all times. I partly ascribe it to the male anger that runs through my family. It's a joke that I have with my siblings and with my cousins on my dad's side, but there is definitely a streak of rage that we have, and that can come out. And I hate that fact, and I always try to reduce it. And I just hope that people always, you know, in my epitaph or my eulogy or whatever's going to happen, I hope that people will say that I was kind.
I would hope that. I would hope that for me as well. Okay, so now you have your own interpretation of this question. Everybody does. What is your Zen?
I think what my Zen is, that's definitely a good one to interpret. I would have to say that it is something that I have not done in years. And I need to get back to that because I have not paid attention to my work-life balance or my personal emotional balance, apart from being regimented on the medications. But it's yoga.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I need to get back to it. But the thing about yoga is that the best description I've ever heard of it is that it's moving meditation. So that resonates with the idea of Zen literally.
Yeah. I completely see that. That's I completely agree with that. That's something you can't, yes, because everybody I know who does yoga is chilled out a little bit better.
Not only does it do good for your body, but it does amazing things for your mind.
Yeah.
You have to focus on it. And that's what I find about yoga because you can't be doing anything else. You can't be thinking of your shopping list. You can't be thinking of things that you're doing in your day. You have to be in your body.
And also there's a lot of repetitive stuff that you do that kind of frees your mind because it's like almost like a mantra.
And every day you're doing the same. Well, not every day you're doing the same pose, but oftentimes you're doing poses that you know. And every time it's different, and you have to accept that. You have to accept where your body is that day, where your mind is that day. It's a changeful process. That's not really a word, but whatever.
Sounds fine to me. Now, this question is something that people have wildly different interpretations of, and I'm interested in this because I have my own stories about this, but the question is based on the threshold, and the threshold is a point in your life where there's no going back. And virtually all of us have gotten there. Some people say maybe they haven't, but I think there's a point you've gotten to where you can't go back. And you're not going to go back. How did you know when you arrived there? How did you know how to feel to cross it? What was the significance to you? And what did you leave behind? What are you glad you left behind? And what do you regret leaving behind?
The time I decided to stop being a designer. And what I mean by that is I've always been a coder. I started in the 3rd grade, on my Apple IIc computer.
That's real.
Yes. Just writing programs out of 321 Contact and just playing around. And one of the fun things I did is I figured out how I was doing one of those choose your own adventure or
321 Contact, like the PBS show?
No,
Okay.
the publication.
Okay.
But same thing.
Okay.
And so there were those text-based games in those days that you typed in a command. And I actually figured out how to stop the execution of the program and display all the code. And so I knew how to win based upon reading the code.
Well, there you go.
And design stirred a passion in me in college, but I think at the end of the day, it taught me how to think, it taught me how to interact with people, it taught me how to evaluate needs, but I was never a very good designer, and I acknowledge that fact now. And so, when the job at Fox Entertainment for AmericanIdol.com came up, and they said, there's no design involved, it's just going to be straight development, I said, okay. And after a year or two, I realized that I was okay with it. I was okay with the fact that I pivoted in my career. So that was a turning point.
That's a threshold. You've crossed that threshold. So, following up with that, we're now into your selections of questions. And the first one we're going to ask you is, what would you do all over again?
Pursue music.
You would.
I would.
That's a simple and very obvious answer to me, because I think everybody who's got music in their brain or in their mind, it becomes part of you. And you never ever lose you.
I actually wrote a personal essay once that said, among other things, if you cut me, I would bleed music.
Okay. And you're absolutely talking about serious music, or is it something you would, I mean, as opposed to popular music, even though it requires a lot of discipline and skill, you'd have to be a virtuoso, virtually anything, but I mean, I think would you pursue serious music?
Yeah, I would be a classically trained violinist. I mean, I already am, but I haven't pursued it in years. But the thing is that I had the fortune/misfortune of growing up with several prodigies. And so it was disheartening and heartening at the same time. So what I found is that over the years, I became obsessed with other obsessions, like design, like coding. And time just dwindled down to where I couldn't practice enough. Like, at my peak, I was practicing 3 to 4 hours a day.
That's just something when you were a kid, when you practiced, were you at home, or you were at school in like the classroom or studio? Or?
At home. I would take lessons every day, or every week. But I was practicing 3 to 4 hours a day at home.
Wow.
In high school.
You never had the luxury.
I had the fortunate luxury of the night owl in me, so that I was able to stay up late and do my homework after I practiced. When I was a little too tired to do the physical movements, I could do the mental movements.
Well, I had the problem was that I played the French horn, and the French horn is always historically the counter melody.
Mm-hmm.
So all you're doing is, when you're practicing, you're playing the accents, and you're the opposite of the melody. And I would get the room door would burst in, and one of my siblings would burst in and just yell at me because they couldn't understand. Well, I'm counting and I'm hitting notes, and it doesn't make any sense to them, and it irritated and distracted them. And if I was going to play, I should just. It's like every piece of music isn't something from Chicago, so I can't just play a simple melody. French horn is a little bit more complicated.
It's a lot more complicated.
And I wasn't going to spend 3 hours in a private studio room in high school, because I was not particularly fond of where I went to high school.
Gotcha.
So, okay. So the other question, the second question is, this is I think 12, is what would you do differently?
Didn't we just do that one?
You said what would you do all over again, and then what would you?
What would you do differently?
Differently, yes.
Cello instead of violin.
Really?
Because the Elgar Cello Concerto is one of the most sublime pieces of work that I've ever had the privilege of hearing.
Okay.
So combine that with my previous answer, and there we go.
So that's a great answer. Now this is a good one. I haven't asked anyone this yet before, but what is the strongest bond forged? Personal, professional, social? What is yours?
My best friend.
That you've known since you came out to when you were young?
Yes. So the same person. We've been best friends since kindergarten.
Really? So
let's count the years. I don't want to, but at least like over 30 years. And we can go weeks, maybe even a month without talking. We can go years without seeing each other, and it just picks up right where it left off, colored with the history that we've experienced between those times. So I'm actually going to see him. I actually saw him last year, and his 3 beautiful children and his wife, and so I'm going to see him again in about a month. And he's been a rock. You know, like someone who is so pivotal, and not pivotal, that's the wrong word, but so central in your life that I can't imagine anything else.
And
Having such a rock, and it's not like he's bailed me out of anything. It's not that I've had to bail him out of anything, but just knowing that there's a constant in the flux of the universe is something important to me.
and he's still located in Iowa?
No, he is actually in Oregon.
Oregon. Oh wow. Okay, so he moved on, changed, challenged, grew.
Yes.
That's interesting. So, you've noticed things about him that anything changed in him, or is he still basically the same stalwart, same core of who he was, or as he changed or evolved in a different way?
I think the only thing that's changed about him is he's gotten a little bit more granola.
Okay, sure. Oregon?
Well, not even Oregon. It's mostly the influence of his wife, who is very granola. So.
Okay. Well, I have a few of those in my life. That's fine, though. You know?
Yeah, I don't judge him for that. The only thing I would say is that I wish his kids were vaccinated, and he wanted them to be. But his wife put the foot down, and so it had to be a mutual decision. So
I agree with you on that one. I think the anti-vaccine thing is a lot. There's a lot of misthinking.
and she's not so much a person that thinks about the anti-vaccine movement like the autism part. She's just very much a natural, holistic person.
Okay.
So that's what she believes in, and so we have to. We respect it. Yeah.
I think that my opinions are very different, but I'll respect someone who does something that's not irrational.
No. At least she didn't have the irrational belief about the side effects.
Okay. So we're going to move on now to. It's a good question. Is there anything you want to do that you haven't gotten to yet that peers all have under their belts?
Yes, actually. I think that the biggest thing that I need to do is accept myself.
Okay.
And it feels like, and if we can harken back to the question of, or the answer of imposter syndrome, I feel like now at almost 38, most everyone is comfortable with their place in life, but I'm still not. I still itch. I'm not accepting of who I am, and I know that might be a trite answer because everyone's always constantly growing, but it feels to me like most people have at least accepted or dealt with their cards in life. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I feel.
Well, that's your perception, and I can't. That's what you think, and that's what you feel. So I have to respect that as well.
I have to think that I'm wrong, but I think that that's at least what my heart of hearts says. That onion, those layers, as I peel them away, it's just at the core of it is just like an unease with who I am.
So this question now, this is these are my Monty Python questions from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Okay, what is your name? you know Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh yes.
What is your name? What is your quest? What's your favorite color? So what is your name? And when I say what is your name, what do you think of when you think of yourself? What comes to mind when you think of your name? Is it me, or is it Sonyl, or is it something else, an idea, or a person who's done?
So, I'll tell you something. There's a reason I sign every email with my name, but all in lowercase.
Okay, E.E. Cummings.
Not E.E. Cummings. That's a good thought, but because I'm less than. That's what comes to mind when I hear my name.
You're less than?
Less than.
Explain that.
Being that I have always been held to a very high standard from my parents, from my teachers. My teachers always nurtured me, and they were always supportive, but they knew that I could be the best. And so in class, I was. My parents demanded more. There was one time in high school when I got an A minus. It was freshman year. And my parents dragged me to an out-of-schedule conference with my teacher, my English teacher. And they said, why doesn't he have an A plus? And first of all, my teacher said, well, we don't give A pluses in high school. Number two, he has the highest grade in the class. And they looked at her and said, tell him he can do better.
Wow, that's pretty
And
good.
on the way back from, and she pointed to the reading list for AP English, which was 3 years away, and I checked off half of them. And on the car ride home, my father said, well, if she's so smart, why isn't she a doctor? And I'm not a doctor. My sister is. My brother is in the medical field as well. So I've always felt less than.
I see.
And I'm working on it.
Okay, very good. I have to respect that as well, and it's a very thoughtful answer, I must say. So, following up with more of my Monty Python-based questions, what's your favorite color, and why?
I'm not allowed to have a favorite color because I'm trained as a designer.
Okay, that's interesting. Everyone else had different answers. I have my own, and I actually you're the third person who chose this question. One was blue, one was green. And my favorite color is green because I find it very, very mystical.
Yes, it is. Brian, my partner, has blue-green eyes.
Blue-green is that's something. It's very and oops, we're still there. It's being born in March and St. Patrick's, being Irish. I'm very Irish. There's a lot of green all over the place, having been there and having done that, something. It's not the electrifying thing. It's very mystical to me. That's something about green.
There is,
and I love that, and that's my thing. But that's not that's yours. So you can't have a favorite color. Okay, that's a very diplomatic, tactful answer. Now, is there anything you would change about yourself, A, for you, and B, for another?
A, for me, is if I could change one thing about myself, it would be self-confidence.
Okay.
B, for another person, that's a hard question to answer. I would say that I would want to be even kinder than I try to be. And just remove that temper aspect that I do have. Even though it doesn't come out against my partner, well, very rarely does. But, for example, if I'm on the phone with customer support for something, it can come out pretty easily.
Now, other people have answered this question too, and they gave me very different answers. I think virtually everybody had this question. What is your first goal when interacting with strangers?
Comfort.
That's for you, or for them, or for both of you?
For them.
I
want them to feel comfortable to approach me, to ask me questions, to interact with me. There have been times when subconsciously I've noticed that people haven't been comfortable. And even though they tried to be, whether it's my race, or whether it's being gay or what, I don't know. but I've noticed there have been times when people have been less than comfortable.
Good. So you put that's a lot of burden on you. It's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
Right.
You want other people to be comfortable. Okay, that's
part of being an extrovert, I think. And especially, I don't know if you know the Myers-Briggs personality test, but I'm an ENFP.
Okay.
So that's very much a people lover, not a fighter, not a judge, and there are many ways to describe that because everyone has their own term for that particular personality. But I find that I just want to love and be loved.
Okay. I'm going to have to. Okay. So now, what is your abiding passion that you care about the most?
I was going to say music, actually, but now that you've said what I care about the most, I will have to change that answer.
Ooh. And what would you change it to?
Love.
Care about love the most.
I do. Because I feel like we don't love enough. And one of the things I've noticed in my professional life, and what I've said to myself more than once, which is not good to say, is that don't love too much because then you'll lose it. That's happened to me with jobs, that's happened to me with lovers, that's happened to me with music, that's happened to me with many things, but I'm trying to overcome it.
Okay. It's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
I mean, everyone has their own interpretation, its own connotation. There isn't a universal affirmative. I think there may be something that rings a bell with everybody, but everybody has their own personal interpretation of that too. So that's a tough nut to crack.
It is, and I think that individual interpretation leaves us all open, in a good way, to each other.
Yeah. That's the differences of what makes us interesting. So following up with that, what do you want to be better at?
I want to be better at understanding myself. A lot of what I've talked about so far has been very personal. And I want to have a better ability to remember what it was like, when I was a very, very small child. Comfortable with myself. Now, in 3rd grade was the first time that I started feeling bad about myself. I started feeling like I wasn't good enough because of these ingrained voices of my parents that permeated my existence. And so to counteract that, I want to go back to being a child and having that confidence before that time of just playfulness.
Okay. Very interesting. I think a lot of people want to strive for something.
Strive for something professionally, strive for something personal, but I find I want to strive for something, I shouldn't say regressive so much as, what's a good word for that? So much as
back to fundamentals.
Fundamental, yeah. Let's put it that way. There's an adage that I heard once that is, do not be someone who has a monument built for them. Be the person who other people say, why isn't there a monument to them?
Okay. Sure. That says a lot. I see that very much. So following up, this is the next to the last question. And this is one, other people have very different interpretations, but the question is, if you could throw it all away and be a rock star, astronaut, movie star, firefighter, bartender in paradise, what would you be and why?
Do I have to choose from one of those?
No, not at all.
Yeah. Secondarily to being a musician, which we've talked about before, would be a physicist.
Really?
I'm not excited about mathematics. I've always been decent at it, but I didn't love it. But the reason why I would want to be a physicist is to understand the mysteries of the universe. So one of my regrets, well, it's not so much a regret as something on my to-do list, is read Dr. Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. It's on my bookshelf somewhere.
Okay.
But when he passed away, it was a pivotal, maybe I shouldn't say pivotal, but it was a very emotional moment for me.
Okay.
Professor Hawking has always held a special place in my heart for what he has done for our understanding of the universe. And I think it was Asimov who said, "We are all made of stardust."
Yes.
And so, unlocking the mysteries there, and it doesn't hurt that I'm a Star Trek fanatic who has wanted to explore different worlds. I've always felt I was born a couple centuries too early. But the base idea is that I would love to expand the knowledge of humanity itself, and I'm getting a little choked up actually thinking about it.
Really?
Because I feel myself just having a little bit of a reaction saying that I wish that we were better as a human race.
Oh, me too. So, but you would want to be a physicist, and they say the devil is in the details, but God is in the math.
I've never heard the second part.
Yeah, sure. That's God is in the math, and I am a skeptical agnostic, and that's one of the things I always say.
I would have to say the same thing. So, along those lines, I'd like to share with you my idea of heaven.
Okay.
And it is very, very geeky.
Go.
How familiar are you with Voyager?
Oh, Star Trek Voyager? Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, there's one episode where Harry is transported to another planet via a mechanism, and the people believe that they're going to the second emanation. I don't remember I think the title of the show of the episode was Emanations. Long story short, they believed that they were going to heaven, where they would be in another lifetime, and they would all be reunited with their loved ones, etc. Kind of our traditional view of heaven. But what ended up happening is that in the parallel place that Voyager was, they noticed energy. Every time that a person died and was transported to this place, and it all formed a ring around the planet. So it was a universal consciousness in a way.
Okay.
That's what I think of heaven as.
I think that there is an intelligence to the universe, and the folly of a man. You know Krishnamurti at all?
Their name rings a very big bell.
He was a philosopher, an Indian mystic, and he said, for men to have the puny intellect to think they can understand what God is. I always say I don't think there's this. Anybody was able to put down an arbitrary point in time and say these are the rules, and you're going to be judged by them.
Right.
And that's not. And there's this invisible sky daddy and all that stuff. That's not my. I
Invisible
never
sky
know.
dad.
I never
love
know.
that way of putting it.
This is I don't believe in that stuff. I don't ascribe to that stuff. I have my own philosophy, and I think that there isn't intelligence to the universe because God is in the math. And you can everything that you can understand is by learning and understanding. It's not just by taking anything on blind faith. You have stronger. I have stronger resolve. I won't even say faith. By the more you know that you don't know, but you know that, boy, everything that's been explained is explained through mathematics, through physics, through astrophysics. Mm-hmm. We learn all that, and we learn more and more and more about everything, and you have a stronger resolve in your belief than I do in intelligence.
In the abstract.
Intelligence.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I'll also mention is that apart from graphic design, my other degree is philosophy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so studying philosophy of religion in specific has led me to some of the views that I have. And it was very funny to be taught philosophy of religion by an atheist, and one of the chief professors of the religion studies department was an agnostic or an atheist. But the long story short is that I keep using that phrase. Is that I find that religion only covers some things. For example, there are more people in Iceland who believe in ghosts than God.
Okay.
My main professor in philosophy was Icelandic, or is Icelandic, I should say. And more people believe in fairies than God in Iceland.
Is that right?
So it's interesting what kind of primal things that we keep in mind versus the traditional establishment. I find it fascinating to think about that. And
I like that you said that. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
We do have primal things. We try to rationalize around impressions and just your basic psyche. And you create
stories.
Yeah.
We try to rationalize our temporal existence.
I'm one of those people who read all of Joseph Campbell and the history, etymology, and how the power of myth, and how that arises from so many different cultures, is one of those things that gives me. I get more strength from that than just wanting to believe something because I'm afraid of going to hell when I die.
Yeah, or just being nothing.
Yeah, there's something there. There's to what he said. He's famously interviewed by Bill Moyers. I don't know if you've ever seen the interviews with him.
Mm-mm.
It's great. It's actually really great. But essentially, he's having a conversation with a priest, and the priest asked him to try to trip him up in his own thinking. And he said, if that was true, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Or something to the point where he goes, I felt like that was a judo chop. I flipped him, and it was something along those lines. And I said, yes, it was. And he was Joseph Campbell was sick and he was dying, and he was doing these interviews to record them for posterity. And Bill Moyers was great. He had a team of people working with him. He was able to answer these very probing, insightful questions that are very illuminating, and he was extraordinary. But I feel that is something that, like I say, the more you learn, the more you know that we don't know anything. Mm-hmm. And to lock it into one thing once is like that's since I never met the people that they say they have a relationship with, that's too much for me. So that's just me, though. So to get to the last question, tell me about your relationship with the animal kingdom.
So I'll tell you a funny story. When we were kids, my best friend and I had this game, an imagination game, that we called the Matter Game, or MG. And we could transform into anything.
Okay.
He chose first, and he was the dog king. Now, I have always been resentful of that fact.
You wanted to be the dog king?
I wanted to be the dog king. Because I am the total dog freak.
I know you love doggies. I know that.
I've always loved them. I grew up with a Scottish Terrier. That's what I hope to get soon. And I babysit all the time for dogs. So I eventually chose the Heat King, so I could choose into any type of heat, be it steam, be it vapor, be it fire.
Okay.
So I could protect the dogs. If there ever had anything happening, I could just be fire. And ward off the evil black bird that we had in our game.
Okay. That's interesting.
So my relationship with the animal kingdom is not perfect because I'm not a vegetarian, but I do appreciate all that animals give us, whether it be sustenance, whether it be loyalty and companionship, like dogs do, and like cats do, and all pets of all shapes and sizes and species.
Well, there you go. I have stories about different animals themselves, and one story we had was we had a cockatiel that lived with us for years.
They live a long time.
Birds do live a long time, and the thing about this was we were at the end of a long succession of family members, 6 family members, 5 sisters and 1 brother lived in one apartment. We lived in a loft on 16th Street.
Okay.
It was huge and we paid nothing. And the oldest sister, who actually did the artwork for the original VHS releases of Star Trek.
Are you serious?
Yeah, she did those covers. She did all
That's
that.
amazing.
She had the bird, and she left there. She moved out, and she came back to visit at one point to do something. There was some family business that had to be taken care of. She came back, and what happened was her brother didn't. He wasn't exactly the warmest interactor with the animal kingdom, I guess. And he decided the bird should be in the bathroom. We had a big bathroom. We put it in the bathroom in the corner. And the bird was lonely. And the bird used to chirp all the time. And we knew that something was wrong with it. And also, the poor thing, because we lived in an old, it had been a firehouse, a place where they stored the wagons for the 19th century fire department. And it had hay bale hatches that were flanked over. And it was an old wooden building. It had a load of mice, and the birdseed would be eaten by the mice. And we come in the middle of the night. Now you come into the middle of the night. You're a Starkers. You go into the bathroom, and you turn the switch, and there are 40 mice crawling all over your feet.
Oh no!
And they've all come in. They've been eating the poor bird's birdseed. So that was one of those things that you just stood there and you shake and you go, because right. So. To do what we had to do to get rid of the mice. Also, the poor bird was not getting his food. He was not getting his birdseed. The mice were eating it. Took the bird out. His name was Jim. Took Jim out, put him in the middle of the living room, and we put up metal shields so nothing could get into him. And in a matter of minutes, he went from shrill, needing attention, to this beautiful, lilting song. And he was never so happy. And virtually weeks after we decided to do this, the sister came down and she just fell in love all over again. She put him out of her mind. She couldn't believe, she was racked with guilt, and she took him home to her house, upstate New York, where he lived the rest. But he's, this was 25 years ago, so he may still be alive.
Yeah.
But I absolutely...
They can live up to 50, right?
Parrots can live a long time. With cockatiels, you can. And I had the luxury of being around a bird and not knowing beforehand how intelligent they are, and I say this about everybody needs attention and affection. Mm-hmm. And when you give it to
everything
needs attention and affection. But everybody, everything needs attention and affection. You're absolutely correct. And I believe that. So that's been my guiding principle. Even though I'm a meat eater and all that stuff, though, but everybody needs attention and affection. Your dog you're a cat, you're a bird, you're a rat. It doesn't make a difference to me. There was a documentary I saw on Canadian sturgeon, because the Canadian sturgeon being produces better caviar than the Russian sturgeon, and they're unsatisfactory, they're unhygienic, and unsanitary, and it's a different thing altogether. And there was a sturgeon outside of this place that's alive, who he swims back and forth in a pool, and he rides up and he gets pet, and he recognizes people. This is a fish. And he knows his name, he recognizes people, and he likes being pet. And that's one of those things you go, everybody needs attention in a fiction.
Except cockroaches.
Well, they'll outlive you. Boy,
for millennia.
There was a woman, I saw a video of a woman, she had a wounded female bee.
I saw that video.
Oh, it lived 28 days.
Without wings, right?
She had something leg, some deformity.
Without wings, yeah.
28 days it lived with her, and she took care of this poor little thing.
Yeah.
Amazing, she had a reaction, and the bee loved her, until she, the 28 days is a lifetime for the bee.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was incredible, and I think that's something that we all should be more cognizant of, because if you can't treat animals with respect and sympathy and humanity, you can't treat people that way either. You'll never be able to treat people with what they need. And you, obviously, there's something deficient in your life if you can't simply just be humane.
There's something that I heard once, is that I know you're a cat lover, but
Yes.
I think the same applies for cats. I once read, "What have we done to deserve dogs?"
Oh yeah, I love those things about dogs, because dogs are just unflinching in their loyalty to love. It's just the greatest experience. I know dog lovers, they don't even want it, they'll get moved, and they want to talk about how much they love their dogs and what dogs do for them, as opposed to cat lovers. We're all like, well, I work for the cat. He's the boss, or she's they're the boss, however you want to look at it. And you have a bond that that's more than psychic, more than intellectual, more than emotional. There's something there that but I know that thing about the dogs. So that's come to the conclusion of our fantastic podcast with Sonyl Nagale. I'm going to end it as I always do, as the kiddies say. Peace out. We'll see you next time.